On Monday the 12th of August 2024 occurred the S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chornobyl developer deep dive, hosted by Xbox. Literally the largest showcase of information and footage for the upcoming game we've ever had. Hello Stalkers and welcome to the Anomaly Dugout. There is a ton of stuff to go through, so let's not waste any time and begin. This is part 1. Focused solely on breaking down the quest segment of the deep dive. The mission takes place in the location of the Great Swamp, which has been reworked but still features many of its iconic landmarks from S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Before diving into the quest in itself, let's take a look at the place and setting. The swamp looks very detailed and is full of various vegetation and life. Indeed, the area was carefully crafted using real plants, such as one particular type of hogweed that Ukrainians quickly recognized. Moreover, many small animals and insects were spotted, including crows, dragonflies, moths, frogs, and some kind of fish. While these creatures seem completely harmless, the place is also inhabited by mutants, of course. The showcase demonstrated fights against the blind dogs, the pseudo-dog with psychic abilities, rodents, the Bayun cat, and the controller, who has a small army of zombified stalkers protecting it. There will be a section dedicated to the monsters further in this video. The task is named Ad Astra per Aspera, a Latin phrase which means to the stars through suffering. Most likely it refers to the fact that in order to reach this important goal, Skif has to go through some difficult challenges. Indeed, the purpose of the quest is to disable psi beacons scattered throughout the location. As it turns out, these are small psi emitters which prevent access to the base of Clear Sky. Yes, that's right, Clear Sky is mentioned in the game, but don't get your hopes too high. I don't think the faction is coming back. Probably we will simply investigate what happened to them. It is very interesting to point out that the whole concept of this task, that is to turn off psi emitters in the swamps, is an idea dating from the development of S.T.A.L.K.E.R Oblivion Lost. Back then it was planned for the main character to disable some psi installation in the old version of the swamps, where the mysterious Last Day faction lived. That's also the location where you were supposed to meet Dr. But I digress. Let's take a look at the landmarks. The developers said that there are 5 beacons to turn off, however we can only see 4 of them on the map and during the gameplay. It might be a simple mistake, or they are not ready to show us everything just yet. The first antenna is placed on the small wooden tower in the middle of the burned farm. We had briefly seen this area in the Time of Opportunities trailer, but now it was shown extensively. The landmark is of course home to a few burner anomalies, in which Skif collected a Mama's Beads artifact thanks to the bolts and the bear detector. There is an animation for picking up the item, the appearance of which has slightly changed. Unfortunately, we could not see its properties. The bear also had a change. Now the green indicator will grow larger around the screen the closer you get to the artifact. They even took the time to properly show the tractor. I think the tractor fans will be happy. The second device is located at the old church. On the way there, Skif traversed the graveyard and explored the cellar, both of which have been expanded compared to how they appeared in Clear Sky. In fact, the cellar could not even be accessed back then. It is now inhabited by the rodents. The developers said that many such locations that were locked in the previous games will now be available in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and that makes me very happy. Anyway, they showcased an interesting concept with the cellar. There's a door that can't be opened. However, through a crack in the wall, it is possible to shoot at the planks blocking the way and access the room. Solving this small puzzle will reward the player with some juicy loot. I think we can expect similar situations to arise in other places throughout the game. The Orthodox Church is just as you would expect, very similar to its Clear Sky counterpart. One difference is the beautiful paintings that have been added directly to some of the walls. Oh, and the place is now the lair of the Bayun, of course. It is still possible to climb all the way onto the roof, and that's where the beacon is. Once Skif shuts it down, he can safely get back to ground level by jumping on a new harmless anomaly, appropriately named Cushion. It seems to slow down your movement, therefore softening your fall and preventing taking damage. The devs hinted that there will be more anomalies with such useful properties, which I think is a nice contrast to all the deadly traps the zone lays down. It will also reward the player for utilizing the environment to the fullest, so I'm eager to see what other kind of non-dangerous anomalies the game will feature. Next we made our way to one of the two iconic guard towers. Skif went up the stairs only to be blocked by some crates. The player is now able to crush them with a simple strike of the knife. There is no beacon there, but a lot of goodies. There will be a section in this video dedicated to all the loot and items shown. Not far from the tower there are some pipes covered by burner anomalies. Such pipes did exist in Clear Sky, but they weren't anomalous just yet. The third beacon is on top of the pump station, the lair of a controller and his minions. The building in itself hasn't changed much from the looks of it. We had seen this place before in a screenshot where Skif was battling some bandits. This is interesting because the developers said that there are no stalkers in the swamps. Perhaps they will start coming in after Skif clears out the area of the Psi emissions. The last emitter is at the second guard tower, so the player runs through the swamp to get there. It should be stated that this new version of the location seems to have less water than before, allowing for easier traversal of the area. Furthermore, it seems the smallest water ponds can be crossed without slowing you down nor causing radiation poisoning. On his way, Skif finds himself at a place which I believe could be a mutant den. Some rocks to hide, lots of bones on the ground. Perhaps this is where the monsters will gather when they need to rest. We get to the tower, which is the same we saw all the way back in the 2021 trailer. The location is still filled with whirligig anomalies, and the fleshes are close by. There is a stomach and a mutated leg on the bridge, probably a reference to that poor flesh. In fact, in the notes section of the PDA, we can briefly see a message found earlier by Skif that calls back to this very moment as well. The tower in itself is a bit different from how we remember it, as the ladder is now external to the main structure. Also, I noticed that a trailer was present at the other tower, while no trailer can be seen at this one. In Clear Sky it was the other way around. The trailer was located at the tower with a ladder instead of the tower with stairs. I should mention that every time Skif disabled a beacon, he learned a bit of information about Clear Sky and some juicy lore, but I'm keeping that for the end of the video. For now, the emitters have been shut down, so the way to the former Clear Sky base is open. It seems the base is located on an island, which can only be accessed by passing through a new landmark called the Warren Shack. It is a wooden house above the water, filled with radiation, easily recognizable through the cracking of the Geiger counter and the white effect on screen. Once on the other side, a storm is suddenly brewing, indicating an imminent blowout. I love how quickly the sky turns dark and these lightning effects. Man, they look so good. Skif runs to the base and finds shelter in a basement, where the showcase of this quest ends. It is obvious this is not just any mission, but actually part of the main story, which is why they did not show how it begins and how it ends, as to avoid spoilers. Now that we've seen the locations up close, let's take some distance with the PDA map. Here's what we got. It's only a small chunk, but it still has some very important details. Here is the comparison with the paper map. First of all, it's pretty obvious this entire part is out of bounds. Then if we try to plot the route taken during the deep dive, it would look something like this. Skif starts north of the swamp, close to the burn farm. He checks it out, then heads east to the church, passing through the cemetery and the cellar. After that, it's south to the tower with stairs, then west towards the pump station, south again in the direction of the tower with a ladder, and finally all the way east, traversing the Warren Shack to get to Clear Sky's base. With all of this in mind, it seems the entire location has been rotated 90 degrees. Oh, and if you were wondering about the train tracks, here they are, which means this must be the Tuzla tunnel. Moving back to a wider view of the map, there are two things that instantly draw the eyes. The first is the cordon on the top left corner. The location is pretty much the same as it used to be. We recognize the army outpost, Rookie Village, car park, grain elevator and the bridge. What's new, however, is the huge perimeter wall. It is interesting that it abruptly ends in the middle of nowhere. Maybe they haven't finished to build it yet? The second eye-catcher is this weird cluster of black squares on the top right corner, as if the PDA had some sort of glitch in this area. We don't know what this is just yet, but my theory is that it is made on purpose, and possibly explained in-game, as a location that could not be scanned from the air for some reason or another. It could be that anomalies prevent it, or this is a restricted area and stalkers are not authorized to have maps of it. With that out of the way, we have a ton of stuff north of the swamp to go through. What I'm going to show you is all assumptions. Nothing is confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt. This looks like the farm shown in one of the artworks. We have some buildings there, could be a small village or maybe one of the summer camps. The train tracks lead to a depot of some sort, maybe an enlarged, reworked version of the substation workshops. This appears to be the ranger station. That's the docks with the two iconic cranes. And here, as well as there, we have at least two ships. Look, Stingray 4 can even be seen over there in the distance, which means this building in the Time of Opportunities trailer must have been the Warren Shack. I think you get the point. This whole area north of the swamp is the reworked Zaton. I'm not too shocked because we suspected this ever since the paper map came out, though Zaton being relocated to this side of the zone does pose serious continuity and lore problems. Now is not the time to talk about it, however, so let's move on. In the gameplay we saw that you can place your own markers on the map, and not just one but several of them. They appear in a green color. Moreover, by looking at the time, people noticed that 1 minute in-game is 2.5 seconds in real life, which means an entire in-game day will pass within 1 hour of playing. This is not how it used to be. In the original trilogy, time passed 10 times faster in-game, which meant that a full day was 2 hours and 24 minutes of playtime. Overall, the day-night cycle will go by much faster in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 than in the previous games, 2.4 times faster to be exact. For the first time, the inventory was shown to the whole world. When you open it, a quick animation plays of Skif taking out and opening his backpack. The menu is simplistic but efficient, reminding of the version from Call of Pripyat. Something new is the bar showing the weight of your equipment. Under 50 kilograms, you're in the green, meaning your endurance will deplete normally. Between 50 and 70 kilograms is the yellow zone. I assume you'll still be able to move around, but more slowly, and things like running and jumping will drain your stamina much faster than usual. Between 70 and 80 kilograms is the red zone. Maybe you'll only be allowed to walk, but I'm not quite sure, since this did not exist in the previous games. Indeed, formerly the equivalent of the green zone was also under 50 kilograms, and what is probably the yellow zone was between 50 and 60 kilograms. Beyond that, you could not move at all. Another thing I noticed is the return of the artifact pockets system, only allowing you to use as many artifacts as you have containers for it on your belt, which of course depends on the suit you are wearing. Speaking of that, it looks like Skif is using a standard Stalker suit in a darker color, and no headgear. One of the alternate objectives for the quest was to get hold of a suit with high level of psi protection, though we can see this has not been fulfilled. Instead, the player relied more on the psi block drug that he picked up on a few occasions. At some point, the psi block was put on the quick access bar, and Skif consumed it while fighting the controller. So it's time to check out the other items with animations that were shown. Of course, we've seen the medkit, as well as the bandage. Then we got the vodka, bread, some canned food, and condensed milk. While in the menus, including the looting screen, which looks like this by the way, the descriptions of a few of these items were shown. Even if they're past their expiration date, medkits can handle basic first aid, but expecting anything more than that could be deadly. This kit has all the essentials needed to deal with shrapnel, bullet wounds and other battlefield injuries. Fortunately, thanks to the IPSF presence in the zone, anyone can get their hands on these kits. The key advantage of this sausage is its long shelf life. It's best not to speculate on how this is achieved in order to avoid ruining your appetite and those of others. Vinca enhances blood coagulations, accelerates wound healing and reduces the likelihood of severe bleeding. Rumor has it that bloodsuckers tend to steer clear of those who regularly abuse this drug. The contents of these cans is a mystery that no one dares delve into for the sake of their own sanity. Once heated over a campfire, they transform into a tasty, nutritious meal. Bread, a staple of the Stalker diet. Following the takeover of Rostock, S.T.A.L.K.E.R became the zone's principal bread supplier. How an ordinary loaf of bread stays fresh for such an extended period of time is one of the greatest mysteries of the zone. Bread lore, let's go! S.T.A.L.K.E.R was a legendary leader of freedom, who managed to take his team into Pripyat shortly before the Brain Scorcher was disabled. We saw his name referenced in Rostock in the Time of Opportunities trailer, indicating his return. The event during which the Freedom faction took control of this area seems to be known as the Takeover of Rostock. During the foray into the swamps, Skif came across many stashes and various loot, so let's take a quick look. There's a sport bag sitting in an old cabin near the burned farm, containing a piece of bread, a beer, a vodka and an energy drink. Not too far from there, Skif found a non-stop, 2 psi blocks and a vodka in some crates, as well as another bag with bread, beer, vodka and an army medkit. Next to the first beacon, some ammo, 7.62x39mm LAN and PS, 9x19mm FMJ, beer bottles in the cellar, and within the secret room, a beautiful treasure, the GP37 along with 5.56x45mm M995 ammo and a high capacity magazine for it, Psyblock, 9x18 PST, 2 medkits and a F1 grenade. At the church was the backpack of an unfortunate stalker, containing bread, sausage, beer, canned food, bandages, a medkit, Vinca and an RGD-5 grenade. On top of one of the guard towers is a nice surprise, the SVD M2 sniper rifle with 7.62x54mm LPS and 7N1, 9x19mm FMJ and 7.62x39mm PS boxes. There's also a bag with sausage, condensed milk, medkits, Venka and grenades, and lastly a medical box revealing a bandage when cracked open. Oh, and a PDA, but that must be related to the main mission. At the pump station, Skif found anti-rads and a can of energy drink. On the second guard tower, an empty medical case as well as a backpack with bread, sausage, beer, vodka, milk, medkits and Venka. Inside the Warren's shack, Skif found a medkit and grenade, then broke an ammo crate containing 5.45x39mm PS ammo. He also opened the fridge, yet it was empty. Last but not least, he picked up a note named Message for Squad, which revealed the location of an ordinary stash. It is important to mention that some of these stashes were protected by traps. The entrance of the cellar had a wire connected to a sawn-off shotgun. Skif can disable the trap and add the weapon to his inventory. Unlike regular items, picking up this one requires to hold on to the X key. It's not instantaneous. Another booby trap was set up on top of the tower, a wire linked to a grenade. Same principle here, you can disarm the apparatus and get your hands on the explosive. In fact, the showcase demonstrated many interesting ways Skif can interact with elements of the world, as well as several movement mechanics. For example, after unlocking the cellar door, you can choose to open it normally or take a peek inside. We did not see how the second option looks, but it's promising, allowing for a more prudent and stealthy way of approach. Also, there's now an interact prompt to climb down ladders, which I believe will prevent some nasty falls. On the contrary, climbing up does not seem to have a prompt. Moreover, some objects can be destroyed, as demonstrated with the crates, but also a few planks in the church. Here the player used his melee attack, striking with the equipped gun. It seems Skif has quite a few tricks up his sleeves. He can climb small ledges. Obviously he can run, jump and crouch. The ability to lean to the sides has also been kept in the game. If you look down, you may see your character's own legs. Furthermore, the flashlight is a headlamp just like in the original, and now has a small animation for turning on and off. Lastly, when hugging a wall or object, Skif will hold his gun in a different manner as to not stick the barrel inside. The developers also revealed minimal information about Skif. I quote, "Skif is a common person with a very complex destiny. He is not a superhero and he is of a complicated nature. He is not very talkative, but he is not afraid to act." In addition, it was revealed that Skif's condition will degrade as he gets hungry, sleepy or injured, and failing to address your character's basic needs will result in reduced efficiency on his part. Now let's talk about weapons. Throughout the gameplay, Skif utilized 5 different guns. Changing between weapons and other handheld items is made through the use of a wheel system, but in case you don't like it, no worries, PC players will still be able to use the number keys to select the right item. By the way, this gameplay was made using a computer and controller setup. This first gun is the Ukrainian-made Fora 221. This modular next-gen assault rifle has earned multiple prestigious global accolades, along with unofficial commendations from the S.T.A.L.K.E.R community. Chambered in 5.45x39mm, this bullpup weapon seems like a pretty nice addition to the arsenal. It was used quite extensively against the pseudo-dog. Then there's the UDP Compact, a simple but trusty pistol of the .45 caliber. Skif shot it at some blind dogs. Moving on to the M860 Cracker, a pump-action shotgun prized for its lightweight build and reliability. It has earned a distinguishable reputation as one of the world's most famous shotguns and remains extremely popular in the zone. The player utilized this gun against the mutants to great effect. The reloading animation looks crisp. Oh, and just like we've seen before, the 12 gauge shells are now blue. Next up is the GP37, a fan favorite. This one came with a double magazine, and we were shown how this feature is activated. With this accessory, reloading will be much faster half of the time. Here's the normal long reload, and here's the faster version. Furthermore, we also saw the change of fire mode with this weapon, as the player selected the 3 rounds burst mode at some point. The shooting was demonstrated against the Bayun and the zombified stalkers. Apparently the reflections on the scope are made in real time depending on your surrounding environment, which is quite impressive. They also showed the comparison feature, allowing to easily see how weapons are different from each other. Here's the GP37 description. This German-made assault rifle is an exemplary piece of modern weaponry, featuring lightweight construction, excellent reliability and an ergonomic design. The last weapon is the SVD-M2, used to take down zombies from a longer range. The sniping looks pretty great, and Skif will even be able to hold his breath to stabilize the rifle. In terms of explosives, an F1 grenade was thrown against the rodents, and another one at the Bayun. The explosion sent some debris flying away. The description says, a classic defensive grenade with roots going back to the 1910s. The enduring success of the pineapple design is reflected in its steadfast use across more than 50 countries for over a century. Also, there were red barrels at the burn farm that exploded upon being shot at. Devs said that the game will feature 35 different weapons, and we've actually already seen most of them. 35 does not seem like a lot. Thankfully, a large panel of upgrades and attachments will be available to customize the guns and add many more variations. Now that the weapons have been explained, we can take a closer look at the monsters fought in the gameplay. In order to get to the burned farm, Skif had to contest the area to a pack of blind dogs. They look and act very similarly to their original counterparts. They are numerous and fast, but not the smartest and go down easily. Still, I feel like this showcase was played on an easy level of difficulty, which is a standard for demonstration purposes. After disabling the first antenna comes the pseudodog. Due to its ability to create phantom copies of itself, this creature would normally be called a Psydog. However, the developers still referred to it as pseudodog, both here and in the Time of Opportunities trailer. Perhaps this indicates that all pseudodogs have gained this power now, or maybe the Psydog will be something else, a creature even more powerful. Either way, the strategy is the same as usual. Find and kill the real dog to get rid of all the illusions. Next we briefly fought the rodents, also known as Toscanos. So far we had only seen it in the form of artwork, so it was a nice moment, although we mostly only heard their noises. This is because Skif blew the pack with a grenade, before efficiently finishing off the survivors. As demonstrated by an earlier teaser, the Bayun lives in the church. This mutated cat imitates human speech to lure stalkers into its clutches. The monster seems quite fast and agile, which is why the player took the high ground to deal with it. The next monster is the controller, who was surrounded by a horde of zombified stalkers. When people get affected by psi emissions, they start losing their minds and eventually turn into a zombie. These are very dangerous as they still know how to use their weapons and have high tolerance to damage. According to the dev, they will always rise up again after being shot, unless you strike them in the head. As for the controller, it's a former human turned monster as the result of secret experiments. Its attacks inflict heavy psychic damage, raising the level of psi radiation, which will eventually kill you. We can see it's quite difficult to take down as well. Our last mutant for today is the Flesh. once a domesticated pig and now a grotesque creature. The player is making a smart move here, leading the fleshes into the anomaly field and letting them get caught in the whirligigs. I have to say, the way they explode does not look as good as it once did, as now there's only a bit of blood and no parts flying around. However, Mollit said these effects will depend on the victim, so I guess we can expect more gore with other beings. I wonder how it will look on humans. Speaking of the whirligig, we saw how it reacts when triggered by the bolt. Now we know that the three main gravitational anomalies will have unique, distinct reactions to bolts, which was not the case in the original trilogy. This is a good change in my opinion, as it will render each anomaly more unique and recognizable when traveling the zone. As a reminder, here's the trigger effect for the springboard, the vortex, and now the whirligig. In addition, we've seen a brand new anomaly that looks like a cloud of floating needles of some sort. Bolts react quite strangely to it, spinning in the air. This anomaly is reminiscent of the one that struck Kirill in Roadside Picnic. While progressing in the mission, Skif will find recordings shedding some light as to what happened in the area. The first message is from Kalancha, who was one of the top members of Clear-Sky. Kalancha, also known as Bean Palev in some translations, used to be a scientist working in the secret X laboratories before the anomalous zone was born. Following the disaster, he, along with Lebedev and Suslov, went to create the Clear-Sky group. We understand this is a very important character with extensive knowledge of the zone and its origins, who should have survived the collapse of his faction. There is no indication Kalancha will appear as an NPC, since this is an old recording, but personally I think there is a good chance he will. Let's hear what he had to say.
To all Clear-Sky personnel, we have been forced to leave the base. It is impossible to determine the exact date of our return at this time. In order to keep the base secure in the absence of scientific personnel, I have reconfigured 5 emission monitoring beacons. In addition to reading higher order Psi effects, their functionality has now been supplemented with the emission of Psi radiation into the surrounding environment. I hope that this will be enough to keep everything intact until our return.
As it turns out, Clear-Sky evacuated their base and set up their emission detectors into Psi emitter mode in order to protect their territory from looters. Probably this was made following the faction's collapse right after the events of the Clear-Sky game. And if that's really the case, it means the area has been abandoned for more than a decade. One strange thing is that the game, as well as the developers, seem to use the prefixes Psi and Psi interchangeably. For example, here Kalancha used the word Psi, but there is also an item called Psyblock. Either these two refer to the same thing and we can use whichever we like, or maybe there is a subtle detail that differentiates the two. I'm not sure. The next recordings are actually not from Kalancha, but from Faust, the blind monolithian.
I can't feel anyone. Where are they? Tell me where they are. Why are you silent? Say something. Anything.
As explained by the devs, most members of the Monolith faction lost their connection to the crystal after it was shut down. They did not hear the voice of their god entity anymore, so they felt lost and confused. It is interesting to point out that Faust mentions not being able to feel anyone, hinting at the fact that all Monolithians could somehow feel each other as if they were bound telepathically.
What have I done wrong? Why have you abandoned me? Was I not your voice? What have I done to deserve your silence? Why must I wander in the dark without my brothers?
without purpose. Answer me! Forgive me. I know I must not doubt. But how can I know your will if I cannot hear you? Show me the way. Let me know I am not alone.
Seems like Faust was having a hard time coping with the monolith's disappearance, especially since he was left alone. Remember the inscription on the map, "Misha has gone crazy"? Perhaps it actually refers to him.
His name, Strider, is unknown to me, but he is one of ours. You are the one who sent him to me. I know it. He says our brothers are scattered all over the zone, lost, to no memory of themselves. He too did not know who he was. But that doesn't matter anymore. Strider and I will find the others and help them remember. Whatever has forced you to remain silent, we shall find the reason and set things right together. This I swear.
So Faust met Strider for the first time and they had an interesting chat. Strider is of course a former Monolithian who was very determined to find out what happened to him and his comrades. We know he created his own group of followers called Noon. Now it seems Faust is dead set on restoring the voice of the monolith, and I believe this is why the two men will eventually come to disagree at some point in the story. At the end of the quest gameplay, Skif reached a basement at the Clear Sky base in order to hide from the incoming mission. This cellar was flooded with waste in Clear Sky, but now it has a trapdoor that leads underground. Walking down the corridor triggers a cutscene, where Skif slowly and carefully approaches the room from which Faust's voice is coming from.
Shot by loneliness. Found with a stone around his neck. Thrown off a cliff. Operating monolith. Hanged. Torn apart by dogs. Killed. Missing. Pripyat. Killed. Dead. Wild Island.
It sounds like Faust is reciting the fates of all his monolith comrades, similarly to how it was in the Come To Me trailer, although with more details now. He mentioned Operation Monolith, which was the military assault on the CNPP at the end of Shadow of Chornobyl, as well as Wild Island, a new location teased by GSC to be in the S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. Not much is known about Wild Island just yet. It seems the place is the heart of what remains of the Monolith faction, possibly the base of Noon, and it features dangerous chemical anomalies. Anyway, the continuation of this cutscene is most certainly what we saw right there in the Come To Me trailer. Faust is sitting in a chair in desperation, in front of a broken side device. This is where Skif will meet him for the first time. Before diving deep into theories, there are two details I need to mention. Firstly, in the corridor we could see a destroyed Topaz apparatus among the debris. This is the same scanner Skif carried in the zone at the beginning of the game, and supposedly he lost it after he was struck in the head and woke up in almost nothing but his birthday suit. This could be a different Topaz, but it's also possible it's the very same one that was stolen, and Skif tracked it down all the way here. Secondly, in the room where Faust is, we see some chemical containers that were also in Laboratory X18. Some speculate the Clear Sky base may be built on top of an old X-Lab, or at least the leaders of the faction took some of the equipment from the secret experiments with them and stashed it in their base for some unknown reasons. Lebedev was already quite shady. I'm sure Kalancha is no different. Now for the big questions. What is Faust doing here? How did he get there? Why was he left alone? Some have suggested that Faust could actually be Kalancha who turned into a monolith and then was freed from the brainwashing. But I don't believe it. The two characters look nothing alike, and their voices also sound different. However, it is possible Faust used to be a member of Clear-Sky, who took part in the assault at the power plant, got captured and joined the ranks of the monolith. There is no real evidence to suggest that Clear-Sky soldiers at the CNPP were indoctrinated into Monolith, as their most likely fate would simply be death due to the emission that ended the game. Yet the truth has never been revealed, so who knows. In this case, Faust may have come back in the swamps because it's one of the locations tied to his previous life. It is unclear how he made it past the Psi radiation. Perhaps former monolith stalkers are still resistant to psychic damage. Another explanation is that following the shutdown of psi emission sources that conveyed the voice of the monolith, Faust tried to reconnect with the entity by seeking other psi emitters, and he discovered that such devices existed in the swamps. I know what you're thinking. This area is a remote location where almost no stalkers venture, and very far from the center of the zone, where most monolith members are. True, but I must remind you that in Clear-Sky, we could find a few dead bodies of monolithians within the Great Swamp, indicating some sort of link between the place and the faction. Moreover, in Call of Pripyat, the monolith had stashes around Zaton, a place we know was relocated right above the swamp in the new game. Maybe Faust hanging around there is not as crazy as one might think. For now, many questions remain unanswered, and we'll have to wait for the release to get the whole picture. There is also a lot of other new materials from the deep dive and GSC to cover, but that will be in the next video. Please be patient, I'm doing my best. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and I'll see you soon for the follow-up. So good hunting, stalkers.